Unbroken, healing through storytelling.
Hello and welcome to Unbroken, Healing Through Storytelling, the podcast with me, Madeleine Black, where I do really what the title says. I speak to people that have overcome adversity and we share their stories really to help other people heal, because I really believe in the power that comes when we share our stories. Today, my guest has really had a catalogue of adversities that she's been through. She is Amy Corey. Let me tell you a little bit about her before we begin. She is just 23 years old and she has started a creative empire from just being honest with her life, her mental health, overcoming her past struggles with being adopted, bullying, depression, suicide, self-harm, eating disorders, and so much more. Her name and message have gained recognition in multiple industries by public figures and big names such as Dolly Parton, Gary Vee, and she passionately infuses this honesty in her music, speaking, writing, brand, ambassadorship, and other entrepreneurial projects. Welcome to the show, Amy. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So because my show is called Unbroken, Healing Through Storytelling, I always ask everybody the same question, which is, what does the word unbroken mean to you?
It's such a beautiful word to me. I think knowing what it feels like to be broken, it gives a sort of an empowerment of like, okay, there's different aspects that I feel like are always fragile and breakable, but you can't truly become unbroken. You can't truly fall apart. And when you go through those things, you can really be like, okay, I was unbroken. I don't think it's necessarily I am unbroken. It's I was unbroken and I will be unbroken. And I think it's a beautiful word. I love it.
That's a lovely definition. Thank you. So life began for you in Vietnam, didn't it? Where you were born and adopted.
Yeah. I don't remember it much. I was 6 months old.
Okay.
But my adoptive parents recorded the whole thing. So it's on video. But yeah.
And adopted within Vietnam or within?
Yeah. I was adopted from Da Nang, Vietnam to America.
Okay.
And I grew up in a tiny, tiny town in America, in Oregon, which is on the West Coast. And I grew up there. And then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee to start my career in 2015 when I graduated high school.
Yes, if you're going to be a singer and a country western singer, I guess Nashville is the place to be, but we will get back onto that. So you do list a huge catalogue of things that you've been through. Do they stem from a particular trauma, or what happened that you experienced so many different things?
It's really interesting with my story is because I have done many years of processing it, and it honestly happened because there was too much happening.
Okay.
So I was about 8 when it all started, and my parents were getting a divorce. I was getting bullied in school. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and it was a very unsafe environment everywhere, school, home, and obviously I couldn't drive or really, escape. And I think it got to a point where there was so much going on. It was just the glass was already overflowing to where it was just a matter of time before it just like burst.
I guess it's such a little age, such a young age, just to have one of those, to have a divorce, to have a mum having cancer, to be bullied at school. Individually, they would be a lot for an 8-year-old to go through, really, wouldn't they? But collectively, it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, so I think it put myself in a self-isolation mode of everyone. And I think the bullying is what pushed me, because it was my kind of last resort on interactions. And because they were so negative, I think that pushed me to the bullying, which pushed me to the suicide, which then pushed me to the self-harm and the eating disorder. But the interesting thing about the self-harm and the eating disorder is that things got better after I left middle school, and that all of that kind of stopped. Everything got better, but those became the addiction and the habit, which I think a lot of people forget about self-harm, is that it becomes a coping mechanism, just like drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. So I necessarily wasn't depressed or sad or anything. It was just my way of coping. And that's what continued the struggle for so long, is I was addicted and I couldn't stop. I didn't know how to stop, and I wasn't choosing to stop. So once that kind of all happened, everything was still shaky within my family. And then I finally realized, because there was no one going through this at the time I was, and I had to become my own hero. So my hero was myself in 10 years. And I saw who she was, and music was a big part of that, wanting to be someone, wanting to help people, and knowing that I'm going to have to get better to do this. And I found that within myself. And I finally chose to start the recovery process, and then was finally pushed to really stay in recovery when my mom was had 6 months to live. And so we kind of made sure that, I was the best for myself and also the best for her for this amount of time. And that was my test of recovery, is when she passed away, to see, how strong I really was. And that's, I think, when I felt the most like broken but unbroken, because it was an awful tragedy. But the light is I stayed 100% within the healthy coping mechanisms, and then moving to Nashville, Tennessee to start my career. And so it's a very kind of dark and light, which is what I really try to push out, is that I know darkness from the back of my hand, but I also have seen so much light from it.
Yeah, it's a yin and yang, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of age are we talking about? You said that you fell into the pattern of self-harming and suicide attempts. Was this at as young as 8 years old?
It was mostly around 11. Okay. 8 to 9 to 10 was very much kind of the bullying, the eating disorder, and the very like deep, dark depression. And then 11 is when the self-harm started, and that lasted until I was 14, 15. I don't remember, 15 or 16. Gosh, I always forget my age. But it lasted a long time, which is what I'm very, open about, is the fact that, I know from anyone how long it can take to get better, because you do have to choose to work on it.
And you are very open. If you go to your Instagram feed, you will see that you'll show photos of you wearing short sleeves and showing off the scars on your arm and not being ashamed of your scars.
No, I think they're beautiful. I think they really show you, everything you've been through, and the fact that you may have lost that battle, but you won the overall war. And I know how much it has helped people to see them, especially in my music career. I lost a lot of opportunities because of them, but I gained a lot of opportunities as well, because I was very honest about them. And I think I always say, if people really judge them, it has a lot more to say about them than
it does. But you're saying there that you lost some opportunities because of them. Can you explain what you mean by that?
I think I obviously was one of the only Asian people coming into country music industry that was very widely open about mental health. And when it comes to music, at the beginning, there's certain games you have to play, there's certain rules you have to follow. And I, very much never wanted to be anyone but myself. I didn't want to cover up my scars. I didn't want to have to get surgery to do all of that. And I knew a lot of times I wasn't, chosen for shows or stuff like that. It definitely was a factor.
But you're saying that you're just being you. You're just being who you are, and you're not fitting into that ideal model of whoever a country western singer is meant to be, white and blonde, I suppose.
Yeah. That's it's. I truly think the most powerful you can ever be is when you're yourself. Absolutely. Because everyone else is taken. So it's just the best thing to just be you.
But what's amazing is that at such a young age, you had this insight that you had to be your own hero, and you knew in 10 years' time that you would be that hero for yourself. Where did that insight or knowledge come from, that strength?
I always say, with experience and the fact that I love growing and I love getting better. And I always think everyone should always, see where they're at, accept and love who they are, but know that there's always room for growth. Yeah. And there's always room to make yourself better. I think because I've had so much hard times and criticism in my life, it's the thing that continues to make me grow and to make me better. And so it doesn't bring me down in a sense. It actually inspires me to listen and to open my mind on something I may not disagree with, but try to see, okay, is there a truth in it? Am I really acting a certain way, or is this something that I need to work on? And continuously doing that, like almost every day, I always try to find something to, work on. And I always try to forgive myself at night and start new in the beginning, is the way that I've been able to get my mindset to where it is. And also, with the mental health stuff and then going into the entertainment industry, it teaches you a lot, and it's kind of forces you to grow. And it's also something I really love to do. So mixing that all together, I was like, it's a really exhausting life, but it's very fun, and I very much enjoy it because I can do it.
And I'm sure this must have been said to you before, but you do not seem like 23 years old. I am a mum of 3 girls, and you're in the middle age of my 2 youngest daughters. One is nearly 20 and one's 25. We've just been screaming around the house because we found a mouse the last 3 days. We just caught this mouse finally. But they would not really talk about personal growth in the way that you are doing. And they're not talking about the paradox of life, how it's light and dark and it's everything and it's beautiful and it's painful. You seem so much older than the head that's on your shoulders.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because I feel a lot older. I feel very old. I like threw out my back the other day too. Like I just feel old. But I think, it comes with a responsibility, as I see it. I feel like my mind comes with responsibility, and comes with a big responsibility to make sure that, I am what I'm talking about. And I think that keeps me very centered and very, I love my job. I love the things I get to do. I don't even think of it as a job, because it's just crazy to me that I get to just do it. But I really appreciate it, because I do feel very old, but I don't think it's a
And on your website, you describe yourself as the one who understands the misunderstood.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest honors I think someone has ever told me, to know what it feels like to be misunderstood. But I always say when I speak, I've truly been through everything you've been through. And that's the biggest thing that was different with public speaking and singing, is that I got to give them the microphone and have them share with me what they've been through. And I listen, and I can help in any way, shape, or form, and show them what's possible for their lives if they are able to do what I did and choose to get better. And so that's kind of where it's like, I truly understand being out of it, but truly understand the mindset when you're in it.
Yeah, because you are passionate really about speaking out about mental health.
I think it needs to happen. And I think in a sense, I'm kind of the evidence of it, physically, mentally. And I see it sometimes as an honor to have that mindset. I know I handled the stresses of COVID decently because of the trauma I went through in the past, knowing kind of what chaotic life can be. So yeah, it's a really interesting mindset, but it's fun, and I'm very honored to be able to share it. And I thank you for letting me share it on your podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. So you were 18 when you made the decision to move to Nashville, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell us what that was like.
I moved to Nashville 3 months after I graduated high school. My father and my 2 sisters dropped me off, and then they left. And so I was 18. I was confident in myself. I did 10 years of vocal lessons prior. So while I was in the nightmare of my mental health, I was also somewhat living the dream with these vocal lessons. And so I was confident, but I was open to listening and opening to learning, knowing that that was the only way I was going to make it and be taken seriously. So I hired a lawyer because my family is big in law. I hired an entertainment lawyer, and we signed to an artist development deal with a guy named Kent Wells, who is Dolly Parton's producer, a year later.
Wow.
And that kind of took off everything.
And have you worked with Dolly Parton as well?
We did a show together not a long time, but a few years ago to honor her producer, who's my manager. We went down to Arkansas, which is no one really goes to Arkansas, but we had to create a stage on a air base field. But it's Dolly; she can do whatever she wants.
But that must be most country and western singers' dream. And you're just 23, and within a year of moving to Nashville, you're working with Dolly Parton.
Yeah, it was I love working. I'm really proud looking back at everything I've done, knowing that, it took a lot more than talent to be able to make it. And that's the reason why Kent worked with me, was because of the work ethic. The talent was there, but it was needing to be built. Obviously, I was 19. And to just continue learning and growing, but knowing that I was always going to put the work in. And I think because I did that with my mental health, always committing and putting the work in, it gave me a good mentality for actual work. And then Dolly is just such an inspiration, and she challenged me a lot. Obviously, being signed to the producer who works with Dolly is a great honor, but also there's that competition as well. But for your competition to be the highest in the land, it really pushes you to be your best self and to get to her level. It's going to take time. I always knew that, but I always saw Dolly as such a great, and because she's just the nicest person ever, but to push me to be better as in every single way. And Kent always told me how much I remind him of her, which is like good and bad.
I have a sense, even if she wasn't on the scene, you would be pushing yourself to be the best version of you anyway.
Yeah. She was just that extra little sparkly boost in the background.
Because you are so determined to thrive, despite all you've gone through. How did you overcome everything? What do you think was the thing that really helped you?
I think it knew that there was light. There was light from the darkness, and I desperately tried to find it. I desperately tried to find a reason to continue and a reason to become who I want to be. And that was because I knew everything I've been through, other people went through as well. And knowing my situation on how I had no one to help me, that passion and that fire to help someone else, because I also knew how lucky, in a sense, I was to have made it through by myself. And knowing that's not every case.
Yeah, because most people really do feel that they're isolated in what they're feeling, don't they? They think it's just happening to them until they speak out, and then they share their story and they realize, oh, somebody else feels like that, or that someone else has had that experience. So, but for you to go through that all by yourself and kind of heal yourself, that's amazing drive and resilience, really, isn't it?
I appreciate it. It was very hard, and that's the thing, is that I can show that it's very possible to do, and the results are very amazing. Yeah. But it's one of my best friends. He is he's also in the entertainment industry. He once told me, let's say the clean version, but he once told me something that I really didn't really understand until he told me. He told me that he's like, it's great that you do things alone, and we all know you're highly capable of doing it, but you don't get a medal for doing it all alone. Yeah. There is nothing to prove by doing this all alone. And that really opened my eyes to be like, okay, yeah, even for me, I talk about people understanding and being understood. It applies to me as well. And you got to, do what you preach. And it just opened my eyes to know that, like, okay, there are people around, and there needs to be people around. And I really want to be one of those people as much as I can be.
So is it hard to ask other people for help? You just like to be totally independent?
I think it's something I'm growing more open to. I think because I have done it for so long, it's a sense of not needing anyone, but wanting people. So it's very temperamental for me. But I've also seen that, as much as, and that's what I love about my fans, is the sense when they're like, thank you for understanding me. I also see them, say, thank you for understanding me. Like, I get to see that they understand my mind as much as I understand theirs. And it's very therapeutic for me as well.
Because you write and sing about mental health, really, don't you? You put it into your music.
Yeah, I've been very honored to do that too. It's hard sometimes to talk about that stuff in music and to put it in a 3-minute song and have it go past all the tests and then test it out. But I'm very thankful, and I love public speaking because I can very much reach out of that as well.
Yeah, so tell us about your speaking career. Where do you go to speak? I know you speak in schools quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah. And before COVID, I was speaking in middle schools and high schools, which
And for people
love.
in the UK, what age is middle school? What age does that start?
11 to 14.
Okay.
So yeah, 11 to 14. So pretty young, which is amazing in the sense that they're allowed to be educated in this because they are also going through it. And that was the biggest thing is, I had to take a year to write my script. And I really wanted to make sure it could hit every single age. And obviously I very much improvise. And the biggest thing that I do is I do a live question and answer, which is really fun. My management was always really scared of me doing that because they know how honest I'm going to be. But I was doing middle schools and high schools, and then did a lot of, I do a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews, to just try to get the message as much out there, to just be like, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell anyone what to do, but I can show them that if they choose to get better, if they choose to take this journey, that it's possible to do X, Y, and Z. And that's the funnest thing. And I'm really, really excited to get back out through virtual and in person for public speaking, maybe by next school year.
It would be great. I mean, virtual has, it's good that we can do it virtually, but it doesn't really beat a true audience, really, does it?
Yeah, we're watching the market. We're watching the schools on who goes back and who doesn't, and kind of adapt to that situation. But I'm really, really excited. This is a big year for me in mental health, and a big year in general. And so I'm just trying to push as much as I can to continuously help, especially because of the pandemic and the mindset everyone has gone in. I think it's the time to
well, especially in the UK, people have really, really struggled with their mental well-being, their mental health during the pandemic because life was shrunk, freedom was taken away from us, and it just it brought up a lot of stuff for people. Do you still feel like that you are okay, or do you slide backwards sometimes?
I've gotten to a point where no matter what happens, I see it as, I would call it growing pains. I very much accept it now.
Yeah.
Because I know, one, it's never going to go back. But, there's always days where, I still need to learn. I still need to grow. So, of course, things are going to happen in my life. And things tend to really just happen in my life. It's very, very incredible to be like, okay, she needs to learn something. Let's just throw this.
So you see it all as a message that you're given, that actually, okay, maybe there's a little bit more I need to clean up here, or I need to have a better understanding of this.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, there's things that I feel like are, in a sense, testing, and also things that show that I need to be healed as well. Yeah, I think racism has been a big thing of that too, with confrontations, especially here in America, all of that stuff. I know that's really been.
We've seen recently, I mean, this might not be aired till about September, but just a few weeks ago, we saw that it was maybe 8 or 10 Asian women were shot.
Yeah, in Georgia.
Yeah.
It was pretty brutal. And I just did an interview the other day talking about it on a TV show, how just, I get confrontations. I had a confrontation last week just because of the color of my skin. And it's one of those things, like I said, things tend to just happen. But it obviously put me in a processing mode, to process it, to feel it, to heal it, to find empathy with people who can relate, and to empower myself to continue doing what I'm doing. So things tend to happen. I'm just able to switch it to
Yes.
something positive.
And you said something very important, that you have to feel it to heal it. We have to feel in order to heal. It's when we numb out and avoid it that we're just delaying the process, really, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I always see it as like the steps of healing. You have to understand it, because you can't be understood if you don't understand yourself. So you understand it, and then you accept it, and then communicate it, and then can grow from it, in a sense of like forgiveness. And I think not necessarily everyone has to, because it takes a long time to forgive and to heal. It took me a very, very long time. But coming to acceptance of it,
But who did you have to forgive, yourself or the people that harmed you?
I think I had to forgive myself, knowing that everything was very much, as much as people can hurt you, in a sense, you're victim number two of their hurt. So everything is kind of how you take it in, and how you perceive it, and how you act. Like, I was very influenced to self harm, but the action was my own.
When you say you were very influenced, what do you mean by that?
I think because of the negativity of the bullying, of the hatred that was thrown at me, was a big influence on the wanting to harm myself. But in the end, the harm was done by myself.
Yes.
And so that was something I had to forgive on that healing factor. But that was, you know, interestingly, one of the easier things to heal, because I think it was an action, because it was an actual action. But yeah, it's a process. It always is a process, and you're always learning and growing, and you're finding better ways to cope, always. And that's the fun
Absolutely.
of life.
And I think that's such an important message to let people know it's not an overnight fix. I mean, you've suffered since you were 8, so even though you're young in my mind, still, you've been doing this journey for a long, long time, and it is a process. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, really, is it?
No, and that's the biggest thing is I had 7 years of going through all of this stuff. It was about 7 years. And this is actually my 8th year maintaining my recovery, to where I'm
Brilliant.
now more in recovery than I was with my problems. And that's a very big and special year for me. And I'm really, proud of myself, excited for myself, and also so excited to share that, to show people, and to be like, I'm a part of your journey always, but I cannot wait until you get to this point too, because it's an amazing place.
Absolutely. Well, I would say what you're kind of experiencing now is post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic stress disorder. You are growing from what you went through.
I really like that. I really like that. Yeah, it's very, I take it knowing that it's a privilege in a sense. Yes, a lot of it has to do with you, but knowing, how bad it was, how bad I've also seen it in other people, and to be where I'm at in my career, it shows that you're not your mental health trauma.
No.
And you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And that includes in your own recovery, in your own life, and then in your career. And that, by healing yourself, you can help heal others. And I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, and you're saying it really comes down to choices then, doesn't it?
It really does. And it's a choice you have to make, because if someone makes it for you, it's only going to last a little bit.
Yeah. You've done so much. There's so much I can ask you, but I have to ask you about Gary Vee and how you got to work with him. I'm sure people will be interested in that story.
He's the nicest guy. I actually knew of him from his wine stuff years ago, because my family's really big into wine. And when I was signed to my management, I got invited to USANA, which is a nutrition company. I was invited to their big corporation in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was me, I was invited, Dr. Oz was invited, and Gary Vee was invited. And so we all went separately, and our schedules were all over the place. But we got time to all be in a room together and backstage and just talk. He's the nicest guy ever. I got to watch him perform live, which was amazing. I was in the backstage because we were all sitting because we were waiting for, I was already there. Gary was on stage. Dr. Oz was coming from somewhere, but we were watching Gary on stage, and I was like, I want to go out there and I want to like see him. And so they sent me with a security guard to the backstage, and the security guard was standing in front where like you could see the stage, and I had to stand behind. But I mean, if you've ever heard him, hearing him in person, man, it's incredible.
And were you speaking after him?
No.
No, I was going to say, that'd be a tough act to follow, really, wouldn't it?
No, I don't think I would. If I got the option to, I think it just ends after Gary Vee.
That would be a very hard act to follow. But yeah, what an amazing experience for all of you. Lucky that they got to meet you as well, because you are, yeah. And I know that you also do a lot of peace ambassador work. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know how it comes, but it just comes. So being adopted, I've known about Holt International, which is a big adoption agency, for a long time. I used to go to their camp. They had an adoptee camp, and I always, as a camper, you want to be a counselor. And then when I was the age of the counselor of 18, I was busy in Nashville, and so we approached each other about an ambassadorship. And so I signed with them for ambassadorship, and I do work with them. I was, prior to COVID, going to tour a bunch of orphanages, but that obviously had to be postponed. And then when I went to Vietnam for the first time since I was adopted, I happened to meet the assistant of the president of this foundation, of the Ho Chi Minh City Peace and Development Foundation, who is the president of that is also the former ambassador to Vietnam, to the EU and Belgium. So she's a very powerful woman, and she invited me personally to become their fourth ambassador, goodwill ambassador to their foundation. And so that's been one of the biggest honors, because I'm Vietnamese. I will always be Vietnamese. I'm very, very, very Vietnamese. But I did grow up in America, and I do consider myself very American as well. And to be invited to this beautiful Vietnamese peace and development, we're working on stuff to go back to Vietnam, kind of more TED Talks and stuff like that there. It's honorable because in many ways, but I think mostly it's because they trust me to do it, even though I'm not fully Vietnamese. And that's really hard. And it's something I take, it's one of the things I think the most seriously, is because I know how big it is, and it's an honor. And I really am excited because what they talk about, what they do, and what they're trying to message out to the world is amazing, about peace and forgiveness, and especially for them to be the ones who stand up to that. And after everything they've been through, it inspires me. And then it also, makes me want to do whatever I can to continue that growth for my country too, for the country and for the people, especially because it's such a young country now, to have that continuously growing.
What an amazing thing to be involved with. And I think it's something that we could do worldwide, to have peace and forgiveness. It would just make the world a much better place. One thing that I noticed that we have in common, which you might not guess, you have a butterfly and a lotus tattoo. So do I.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
My first tattoo at the age of maybe 46 was a butterfly. And then I have a large lotus flower. And I have a little one as well for my girls when I was 50, my 3 hearts on my wrist.
That's beautiful. I love that we have matching tattoos.
Yeah.
I got my butterfly tattoo 3 years after 3 years after I was maintaining my recovery for self-harm. And then the lotus flower was very much about that in the beginning.
Yeah, because the lotus really, out of the mud grows the flower. And really, absolutely what you are doing now, you just see this life force that comes off you. Your energy is, I feel you're a pretty unstoppable young woman, and you're definitely one to watch. So
So sweet.
anybody that's listening right now, do you have any little bit of advice or any tips? You know, what has been your greatest lesson out of all of the journey that you've been on?
I think one of the biggest things is knowing that you are not alone. That
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I've had to learn as well. But also that you need light. You need darkness to be able to create and see the light. And that the world is a very dark place, but the light that is always there is the light that's in you.
Yeah.
And so if you shine it within yourself and you can exhale it into the world, and that not necessarily the world doesn't get better usually, you just do.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I always tell people is that, things probably won't get better. You just are able to handle it better and you can get
Yes.
through it better and you become better than the world. And then you shine that out. And so that's one of the biggest things I always like to say is that it truly is your world first. And then you bring that into the world.
Absolutely. You have to really do the journey inside for yourself, and then you can go on to help others. You are really, as you were speaking, what came to me is you are really a lighthouse, and you really are literally lighting up the way for other people. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much, Amy, for coming on the show. It's been really great to speak to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for your platform. And I was amazed by your story too. I think when I messaged you, I was like, wow, it brought another light into my life. And so thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We're always learning, as you say. Thank you.
Unbroken, healing through storytelling.